Hey guys, this is Adrian from PDC coming at you with yet another video. As you guys may know, OP Set 5 is coming to you very soon, December 8th, and will be tournament legal a week from then, which would be December 15th. So this means that we have about 20 days, 3 weeks left of OP Set 4.5, which means there's still a lot of tournaments to play, right? Whether it be, offline, online, you got locals, box tournaments, case tournaments, whatever it may be. And so I'm here with you to show you the top 5 premier decks to play for the rest of OP Set 4.5. These decks are tier 1 and above, have won in all of our large tournaments as of late. Very consistent going first or going second, and just very powerful. So we have the OP1 Trafalgar Law, we have OP3 Katakuri, we have OP4 Green-Purple Doflamingo, and to round it off, we have 2 of the new leaders from the new starter deck 3 captains. We have Red-Purple Luffy and also Red-Purple Law. So these deck lists I've pulled from the winners of the most recent tournaments. So starting off, we have the Doflamingo from Gerald Ornson, who actually took first place in the Core TCG November Ultimate Cup. So very standard Doflamingo deck here. I think the thing to look out for is the 4 Usopp, 4 Namis, and 4 Brooks. Doflamingo decks recently have opted for the quick, faster tempo by playing more 3 costs, right? So they opt into basically their turn 2. They're able to play Brook and also play Nami or Usopp at the same time. That's kind of like your top curve. And then on your turn 4, you're able to play Luffy into the Brook, into the Nami, or Luffy into the Uta, right? Then you also have 2 Guilt of Sorrows, which I think are really good into certain matchups, specifically Mirror. If you're able to play that out and keep it on board, you essentially win the game by outdrawing your opponent, right? You also have 12 event counters, Punk Gibson, Thunder, Bagua, Spider Webs. I think that a lot of different Doflamingo lists have, I would say, a lot of different events. But I think that, the reason why this deck list won is because Punk Gibson, Bagua, and Spiderweb are probably the 3 most consistent events that are useful in, the most scenarios possible, right? So congratulations, Gerald Orson. I think that this is a really strong list. Very consistent and I would say very standard. And I think a lot of One Piece is more about consistency. How many times out of a 9-game tournament, 10-game tournament are you able to meet all the cards you need to play out your game-winning strategy and be able to execute it, right? Sometimes when you pick cards, you're like, oh, this is great for this scenario, but in 9 to 10 game tournament, right? How many times are you able to consistently pull that off? Those are the things that you really need to think about while you're building out your deck list. So yeah, I think this is a really strong Doflamingo deck. I think Doflamingo by itself is just, super strong and probably the most consistent deck in 4.5. Yeah. Next up, we have the OP1 Red-Green Law. Honestly, I think this is a super interesting deck. I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong about Law. When the restriction list came out, Nami was banned, Dadan was banned. I thought that Law was just a goner, right? Tier 1 all the way down to tier unplayable. But a lot of the really strong Law players, they huddled together and they created a lot of viable lists for Law that basically proved that that deck wasn't dead. And they're right. This is a tier 1 deck. It definitely isn't as consistent as the old Law because you don't have Dadan, right? You don't have the searcher for your searchers. But I think that I would even argue that this new deck list hits a little bit harder, a little bit more removal, and just trade off with a little bit less consistency. So a lot of the Law decks, they basically tested out 3 different archetypes. They tested out a heavier Supernova build, the Wano archetype, and also deep dived into the Whitebeard archetype. I think that the winning combination is doing Supernovas with Whitebeard, and so here you see this deck list running Izo, Thatch, Fossa, Haruda, Vista. I've also seen some deck list win with White eBay, but I think the core card here is probably the Thatch, a 1 cost that's able to basically give itself power so that it gets up to 4k, and you can just put a Dawn on it to swing for 5, and then you're able to bounce it back so you don't lose the card for free, right? So this deck pretty much does everything the old deck does without the Dawn. And so, although the consistency is less, I think that it's still quite an amazing and strong deck, right? I think another thing to note here is the 4 Vistas. Before, I think a lot of Law decks were running 2 or 3, but now you are consistently seeing Vistas every single game, especially your turn 2 and turn 3. So you do Otama and Vista, and you're able to basically remove anything on the board that previous Laws weren't able to because they couldn't search for it, right? So super cool deck list. Congratulations. This one is Jeff Gomez, who went X1 and placed 3rd in the same Core TCG November Ultimate Cup. So awesome deck list. Congrats. Next up, we have Red Purple Law. This one is by Benjamin Gerard, who actually took 1st in the I think he took 2nd in the TCG Expo UK Regionals. So this is the UK people over there, but they've got really amazing competition. I think that event itself was about like 900 people, a very large number. But let's take a look at this build, right? I think what's really interesting about Law, for those that aren't familiar, is the leader ability. It's able to, once per turn, you're able to bottom deck any character on the board that's 3,000 power or below, and also at the same time play a 4 cost or below from your hand, right? So basically this is an even faster version of the previous Law. This Law is able to play a card, remove something on your opponent's board, and play a 2nd card in the same turn. The cool thing is that you're actually able to do this every single turn that you play the game, starting from your turn 2. So I think the core engines of this deck is definitely the Heat. It's the Gordons, the Zoros. Honestly, I think something that's really interesting about this deck is that almost every card is playable. Almost every card isn't a dead card in your hand. There's not too many non-counter events cards. There's Gordon, there's Zoro, there's Round Table. That's pretty much it, right? Everything you can either play or you can counter out for. So I think the really cool text from this deck is probably the 4 Rorona Zoros that are 5 cost. So you're not able to play this card with your leader ability. However, you have so many cards now that are able to debuff, basically power down your opponent's characters, that you're almost always going to be able to pull off your leader ability to remove something on the board, right? So you have the Bon Presto promo Trafalgar Law that does -2,000. You have Rorona Zoro that does -2,000. You have Otama that does -2,000, and then you have the Gordon that does -3,000. So you basically have, let's say, 4 + 4. You have 16 characters from your deck that it's able to debuff your enemy creatures. So I think that's why they're playing this card. Super consistent Law decks. I've played this matchup many times, and they're always able to execute the same strategy that they play every game. So that's why it's so strong. And yeah, this new 4 cost Law that's able to handlock your opponents from having 7 cards or above. It's just it makes you play a different game, and it's really limiting to your opponent. So I think purple right now is just on the rise in general, and moving on to OP set 5, there's even more purple support. So you're gonna see these decks get stronger and stronger. If you thought Trafalgar Law was annoying now, next set I think it becomes even more annoying. Obviously there's new powerhouses coming on board, but yeah, Law is going to be really strong even moving on to next set. So we also have the champion from the TCG Expo UK Regionals, Salvatore Olivia. So he was playing the RP Luffy, Red Purple Luffy, and so this is his deck list. It's super interesting. He's playing the rush version, playing 10 cost Luffy, playing the 9 beard obviously, and I think the really interesting tech here is the Douglas Bullet. So Douglas Bullet's effect, for those that don't know, is it's an 8 cost 10k non-counter. When you play it once per turn, you can don -4 to rest up to 2 of your opponent's cost 6 or lower characters, and this card also gets double attack. So I think that this card is really, really strong in this meta because there's just so many mid-range blockers, right? You've got queens, you've got utas, you've got sabos. So Douglas Bullet, if it sticks on board, which as a 10k 8 cost, it probably will. The next turn, your opponent's not gonna be able to activate or be able to use any of their blockers. So I think the strategy for RP Luffy is actually very, very simple. Early first two, like 1, 2, 3 turns, you just try to ramp, right? Ramp as much as you can, and then play your queens on curve, play your captain kids on curve, and then you get to that 8, 9, 10 dawn, and you're golden, right? Then you just start playing your Luffys, you start playing Whitebeards, Douglas Bullets, captain kids, and you start swinging. So if you guys like super aggressive decks, I think that RP Luffy is the deck for you. I've played against it many times. I think at this moment there is a slight consistency issue. Sometimes this deck does brick, right? But in general, I think RP Luffy gets stronger and stronger moving on to set 5, OP5. So I think obviously this deck got first place. It's very, very strong when it hits, and it's still able to go 9-0 in any sort of regional tournament. There's a lot of variations of this deck, but I think right now 10 cost Luffy is the way to go until OP set 5, where instead of playing 10 cost Luffy, you play 10 cost Gear 5 Luffy, and that opens up an even higher tier of power in this deck. So really, really strong. I think, yeah. Next up we have Charlotte Katakuri. I think that this deck list, Katakuri by itself is already pretty standard. There's not too much to say about it. Everyone runs the beige Amanda Strusens, and I think that by now we've seen this is the premier casino deck, right? If you get 3 or more triggers on your life, you essentially win the game. I don't think there's any doubt about it. The only tweaks that I'd see from this deck is running 4 Thunderbolts instead of 3, running less 7 cost Charlotte Linlands, and and maybe running that 2k counter Sanjis, right? But aside from that, I think that there's not too many variations of Charlotte Katakuri. It is a very, very strong deck, and I think that something that's interesting about Katakuri is that if you top end your triggers from your life, there's no deck that can beat you, right? Like you can play as well as you want against Katakuri, but if they trigger that Thunderbolt, if they trigger that Sanji, if they trigger that beige in their last life or two, that's like unplayable, right? It is so hard to play against. So yeah, really strong deck. I think that into OP5 it gets even stronger, gets even more support. I think 3000 volts is going to make this deck even more consistent. And yeah, I'm not excited to play against Katakuri, let me tell you that. It is probably one of the decks that I fear the most, and also the ones I most do not like, I least like to play against. So these are the 5 decks that I think give you the best chance to win in for the rest of OP4.5. Now that I look at it, I think all 5 decks are so strong that going on to the next set, they get even stronger. So I think maybe that's why they're so strong right now. So if you guys got this far, thank you so much for supporting the channel and watching the videos and listening to me talk about One Piece. There is a 6th deck that I'd like to talk about. It is Rebecca. I actually think that this is the sleeper deck of 4.5. It is probably the best deck in format. And I know that that's like super high praise to say about like a deck like Rebecca, but even in 4.0, I think it was an unbelievably strong deck that had no bad matchups except for Blue Crocodile. And now in 4.5, Blue Crocodile isn't even being played anymore, and so there's really nothing that beats Rebecca, right? a lot of you guys are gonna say, yeah, Katakuri, yellow beats Rebecca, but it really doesn't. Objectively, if both players played right, 9 times out of 10 Rebecca would win, right? You basically get to that 0 life versus, you know, however many lives Cat has, and then you start setting up with your sabos, with your blockers, and get ready for that 1-turn kill with the Luffy double swing combo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal deck list. I think that there's a lot of flex picks that you can kind of tune for your own list, just because the Dressrosa package is simply too strong, right? If anyone knows anything about the next set, Sakazuki, you can kind of... Actually, I think Rebecca was a really good pre-Sakazuki, right? They play pretty much a very similar way. Lots of removal on board. So the simple Dressrosa package where you have 4 Barts, 4 Kairos, 4 Olympus, 4 Sabos, 4 Luffys, and then followed with the Tyranno Bastardo and the King Kong gun, kind of just carries your deck all the way. Everything else that you have is pretty much icing on the cake, right? You just want to play out those cards on curve. I added a Gum Gum Red Rock just so that, you know, we didn't have... sometimes it's nice to just be able to play simple removal instead of having to chain combo Olympus with the Tyranno Bastardo. I also added, you know, Great Eruption and 6 King Pistol just because it those are nice to haves. They don't really affect the deck too much. You can cycle through them, or you can actually play them, right? Sometimes I found that while playing Rebecca, you get into those situations where you're just down, you know, 1 or 2 cost. And so Great Eruption draws a card, you don't lose anything, and it's just 1 Dawn. And you're used to using that anyway for your Rebecca event, right? I think the Garps and the Kuzans are definitely optional. They improve the Katakuri matchup greatly, right? As soon as you play Kuzan, yellow can't respond. So, you know, guys, there's 3 weeks left of OP4.5. There's still lots of tournaments to play. If you have to win, you know, play those 5 decks before, but my personal pick would be Rebecca. I'm usually really good at these meta calls, so, you know, hopefully you guys also agree. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video where we're going to go deep dive straight into OP5. So we're going to look at some some WCS videos of Sakazuki versus NL or Katakuri or Purple Luffy and those things. So if you guys are excited about that, I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.